a former narcotics-dependent seller and distributor of prohibited goods, if we want to be humane about it. I'm the one who, out of sheer stupidity, got hooked on drugs, and then got many other guys hooked on needles and powder. Naturally, as a punishment for the wild years of my life, I served time in prison. I came out from behind bars and started volunteering, now collaborating with charitable organizations.
I am an ex-law enforcement officer. During my service, I repeatedly encountered lawbreakers, thwarted their illegal activities. For outstanding achievements in my professional career, I received knife and gunshot wounds as a gift from criminal elites. But as you can see, I am still alive, and today, I am going to reveal information known to a narrow circle of individuals fighting organized crime.
I am a rehabilitologist, a psychotherapist with over 13 years of practice. My specialization is dependent patients, primarily drug addicts. Also, compulsive gamblers and those suffering from alcoholism.
I am an expert in the field of cybersecurity, with over 10 years of investigative experience within the structure of state special services. Our unit focused on the dark side of the network, the darknet, and exposing internet criminals. We were involved in identifying hackers, tracking down wrongdoers distributing illegal goods, or engaging in other subversive activities online.
For the money they promised me. Just kidding, of course. Recently, I joined a religious movement, so consider this visit as one of my good deeds to cleanse my dark karma. I came here to open everyone's eyes to this dramatic horror, drug trafficking and addiction, to unveil the underbelly of the drug environment, to talk about the side effects of narcotics, to share what types of drugs exist, to revisit my path into drug addiction, to explain what makes drugs so enticing, to explore where the consciousness goes after injecting into a vein, what special effects you see in your head depending on the drug, to calculate how much it costs to spend a month on a needle or fun pills. I've experimented with practically every psychoactive substance available today: opium, poppy, heroin, cocaine, tramadol, methadone, meth, morphine, salts, fen, and other drugs with high codeine or opiate content. With the experience of consumption, I can not only classify drugs but also clarify the viewer about the essence of the action of each of these prohibited products. Perhaps for those itching to sniff for the first time or wanting to try a shot, my story will be an instructive lesson, like a vaccine against a virus during quarantine.
To talk about how drug distribution methods remain relevant and then mention what has changed in the last decade. To disclose secret methods of identifying drug criminals. I personally conducted over 100 arrests with the product in hand, infiltrated several groups to identify laboratories and handlers, exposed networks built for drug trafficking. I left the business, so I am ready to share operational information that I previously considered strictly confidential and could not disclose to preserve the secrecy of investigations.
For me, our meeting is an opportunity to share my personal experience, to talk about the most unusual and frightening cases that happened with my patients. I want to try to describe to the audience the states that people using drugs find themselves in. What's even more important is to inform about the illnesses caused by common psychotropic substances. I will share my practical observations on the course of the disease. I hope you will be interested in learning about the recipes for comprehensive rehabilitation. Finally, I'll address common questions like, are there former drug addicts? And, is legalization necessary? And so on.
Today's discussion will clarify the capabilities of special services in the network, shed light on loopholes exploited by online criminals. It will unveil the backstage of the online black market for drug trafficking for the audience, and, simply put, shed light on what the darknet is and how it operates today.
Sweet elixir immersing in a world of euphoria, adventures, vibrant colors. But for me, it's now also a direct road to the grave. Through my veins, I've tried it all. Heroin, cocaine, meth, speed, and other homemade injections. Anything not injected, I took as powder, ampules, or pills. I've experienced a euphoric state that Buddhist monks in the astral won't tell you about, but every decision we make has consequences. I have no teeth. My body is covered in scars from syringes I even injected between my legs. Is this considered rock bottom in the world of addiction? Yes, it is. You can't go any lower. I have HIV, and now I'm on pills, which I'll take for the rest of my life. Time left is very little. According to doctors' predictions, with these doses, I may last another 5 to 10 years. Drugs truly amused and delighted me in my youth, but they played a cruel joke on my entire remaining life. Unfortunately, I realized it too late. And today, I'm here so that our viewers can draw their own conclusions.
It's like a terrible plague that weakens more and more people. Literally destroys bones, rots internal organs, drains health, and maims the psyche. And drugs are also the ability of some individuals to influence others. To parasitize at the expense of others' misfortune, in the midst of impoverished and powerless people. Or, on the contrary, indulgence, complicity, and encouragement of unpunished revelry among amoral personalities in affluent layers of society.
Association. Dirty goods, a legal business, a prohibited sphere of activity that allows one to enrich oneself many times on the wrong side of the law. Bribes and deals. The ability to make money for certain wrongdoers without special achievements or efforts. Manufacturers, dealers, addicts, crime, mafia, anarchism, poisoning the minds of the sane. That's what drugs smell like to me.
Darknet, shadow business, dirty money, a world of masks with hidden faces. The circulation of prohibited goods online, a series of encrypted financial transactions behind the eyes of ordinary law-abiding citizens, outside the system of state institutions.
Let me talk about my first experience. I wanted to prove my superiority over classmates, so I befriended adult, authoritative hooligans from our neighborhood. At 15, I tried weed in their company, striving to strengthen my position among the local gangs, relaxing and having fun by their rules. Usually, each of them had around 5 grams of marijuana for 3. These guys loved attacking local weaklings under the influence, taking money from random passers-by on the streets.
So, at 15, you were already experimenting with drugs? Involved in hooligan fights? That's not normal for a child.
And the bar has dropped. Children aged 7 to 9 have already heard about drugs. First from older acquaintances, and also in clubs, sections, and schools. Homebodies learn from the internet, advertisements, movies, and music about drugs. So-called gangsters have put cocaine on a pedestal. Famous rappers spare no facts about drugs in their lyrics, and before them, the rock culture that partly propagandized the pleasures of life also promoted various highs. All of them, to some extent, popularized both light and heavy drugs. In addition, Hollywood movies about famous mobsters, talented artists, geniuses using psychotropic substances, music videos about glamorous parties under the influence of drugs also contribute. Often, immature children in elementary and middle school, upon hearing the word drug, try to find information online or learn from friends. If they find it, gaining access, and without proper explanation of the problems of drug addiction from parents and surrounding adults, teachers, mentors, coaches, they consider trying it to experience the pleasure described by others.
Social networks and messengers account for the lion's share of the so-called first contact. Statistics speak of over 5 billion active users of social networks worldwide. For example, Facebook has brought together about 3 billion. YouTube has 2.5 billion. WhatsApp has registered 2 billion users. Rapidly growing TikTok has surpassed the 1 billion mark, and other messengers like Telegram, Viber, and the like. Launching a couple of videos there with characters under the influence of drugs can easily make the audience think about them. For wrongdoers, content of this format serves as an additional tool for acquainting with a potential buyer. It's not easy to monitor what is being discussed in dialogues and what they offer someone to try. And censoring the internet is practically impossible. True, in China, they try to control the internet, but only for the convenience of the authorities as an exception. North Korea went even further. In this state, only a list of white sites where a user can enter is allowed. Everything is under control there. Registered computers, printers, routers, internet providers, but you wouldn't want that in your country, believe me. Harsh censorship leads to the restriction of rights, violation of freedom of speech, and dictatorship. And do you really think this significantly restrains information about drugs? Demand begets supply.
My childhood was without the internet. Computers became available later, as did smartphones. Back then, we shared experiences with neighborhood boys. One heard something, another tried it somewhere. In 2024, kids learn about psychoactive substances earlier. Everything's already on display online.
To television producers, filmmakers, music video directors, there are also many questions. Some simply cannot do without scenes with drugs, which only arouse subsequent interest from the audience.
I take Quaaludes 10 to 15 times a day for my back pain, Adderall to stay focused, Xanax to take the edge off, pot to mellow me out, cocaine to wake me back up again, and morphine, well, because it's awesome. More to make them.
For a long time, stories have circulated about talents in various spheres of culture and art resorting to the use of narcotic substances to enhance their creative potential. Some individuals actively spread rumors about the development of strong personalities thanks to psychoactive drugs, while others mistakenly take these statements as pure truth. These fabricated tales are further perpetuated by the direct distributors of illegal goods, as they are directly interested in their own financial gain. Today, we should not assert that idols of generations become super successful and create brilliant works thanks to drugs, whether in film, music, writing, or painting. In reality, for those celebrities who got involved with drugs, everything turned out too tragically. When outstanding talents became addicts, the disease literally broke them morally and physically. Trying psychotropic drugs, a person becomes powerless against destructive addiction. Prolonged abuse of narcotics often arises as an attempt to cope with internal psychological difficulties. These personalities also face the pressure of worldwide fame and a loss of inspiration for their creative endeavors. But everyone forgets that forbidden methods provide only fleeting pleasure, followed by persistent, severe depressions. Those using drugs are periodically enveloped in unfounded fear. A strong sense of hopelessness emerges, and the person's rationality rapidly deteriorates. As a result, the death of a drug addict occurs much sooner.
On August 5, 1962, narcotics led to the death of the renowned film actress and American sex symbol Marilyn Monroe. The woman had managed to establish friendly relations with the President of the United States. Law enforcement officials confirmed the actress's overdose from a mixture of drugs and psychoactive substances. Another iconic figure also fell victim to drugs. In 1977, Elvis Presley passed away. He was referred to as the king of rock and roll in the music industry. According to reports, the singer's cause of death was a heart attack after taking various medications. Narcotic substances were found in his blood. And remember what happened to the globally famous musician Kurt Cobain. The leader of the legendary band, Nirvana, had to interrupt tours due to health problems. Drugs destroyed him. After unsuccessful attempts to overcome severe addiction, the man committed suicide. He took a life-threatening dose of heroin and then shot himself in the head. The artist's life was cut short in April 1994. He was only 27 years old. Whitney Houston passed away on February 11, 2012. She was found unconscious in a hotel. Since there were no signs of violent death, the most likely cause of her demise was a drug overdose. In most versions from law enforcement and journalists, the woman had long been using psychotropic substances, antidepressants, and alcohol. Now let me provide another historical example. There are those who romanticize the criminal world, admire the drug trade as a quick way to make money. Do you remember the story of Pablo Escobar, the most famous drug lord of all time? A man who amassed his fortune on psychotropic substances. He and his associates conducted their illegal activities in Colombia. In the 1980s, his business empire controlled the largest share of the global cocaine market. According to some expert estimates, Pablo Escobar's financial fortune exceeded $25–30 billion. However, the world's most wanted drug trafficker ended very tragically. And let's not forget, according to some reports, pursued by the Colombian authorities, the sick criminal committed suicide out of desperation. According to other information, he was shot by representatives of another criminal group that fought against Escobar's cartel for influence in the region. Remember, those who intentionally associate themselves with drugs come to a tragic end in their lives. In most cases, chronic drug addicts are equated with criminality because, at a certain point of degradation due to brain damage, they are unable to legally earn enough for the next dose. In the pursuit of a psychoactive substance, they may harm those around them.
Certainly, drug use always inflicts damage on the physical and mental health of the user. Additionally, due to severe addiction, drug addicts face problems in family life, crises in education, or strained relationships at work. The notion that the use of narcotic substances can lead to greatness in a specific field is simply an illusion. It's just absurd justification from pitiful and weak-willed individuals. Few people know that the pain experienced by addicts during withdrawal is similar to the sensation felt by a cancer patient nearing death. There is a misconception that drugs provide an unparalleled high that cannot be compared to any other sensations. However, individual experiences vary. The new intense emotions that young people seek are also subjective. It is important to direct the attention of our children to role models who advocate spiritual development, motivate their fans towards a healthy lifestyle, and have successfully realized themselves in their careers and family relationships. Meanwhile, representatives of the drug trade impose stereotypes about the incredible pleasure of drugs. Using these tactics, criminals lure new clients, especially among the younger generations, into their deceitful webs.
Under this pretext, a drug dealer typically offers illegal psychoactive substances to another potential victim. Novices are assured that they will experience an incredible euphoria, and life may improve thereafter. However, in reality, they are lured into a trap, and individuals become entangled in a web of criminal dependence. Drug use can lead to significant financial problems or involvement in legal troubles.
Children have started actively filling themselves with information due to the rapid growth of the information field. The internet and social networks, in particular, have lifted the veil. Some are learning something useful faster, while others are looking for trouble online. At the very least, parental control and programs to monitor time spent on the computer are necessary. Ask your acquaintances if they check their browser history, even if it's just once a week, searching for keywords like drugs or other prohibited things. Moreover, installed applications on smartphones, non-standard additions to the desktop, huge lists of incoming calls, subscriptions to Telegram channels with strange names. All these things can be the first markers to think about.
Agreed. It is necessary to carefully monitor the child, especially in adolescence. Don't ignore cases of sudden mood and behavior changes. Parents may feel reassured if their son or daughter is at home in the evening, in the neighboring room rather than outside, but this is just an illusion of safety. Perhaps they are going through a list of psychotropic substances while being advised by an experienced drug user in a chat. The latest data from rehabilitation centers indicate that the threshold of children's exposure has changed. By the age of 10 to 12, children were already discussing drugs among themselves. In the best case, this conversation ended with a disinterested chat or explanations from a strict father. In the worst case, it led to curiosity and the first experience. This is how children learn about sex as well. Nevertheless, when it comes to drugs, around the age of 12 to 13, they start experimenting with the lightest ones, such as marijuana. The developing brain constantly absorbs information, trying to analyze and absorb as much as possible. Naturally, everything happening in your social circle attracts your attention. If your classmate joins a sports section, you will at least be interested in what he is doing. If your friends are planning to go to a disco on Friday, you will want to join them next time. Your neighbor shared his first experience with drugs. Believe me, you will be interested too. On one hand, to understand the issue by reading information, but theoretical knowledge tempts you to try, to experience what it tastes like. For 14 to 15-year-olds, pills and powders are attributes of a good evening or the so-called party.
The complexity lies in the fact that today's legislation lacks effective tools to combat minors for drug use and distribution. A significant sentence threatens only adult drug couriers, considering that their guilt will be fully proven under the article on the distribution and trade of prohibited substances. Many try to trick the system, convincing the court that they consume psychotropics only for personal use. Such a sanction consequently shifts the punishment towards only for consumption. It's one thing to decide to use drugs oneself, and quite another to get others hooked on powders, on needles.
By the way, I learned about needles and syringes at the age of 17. Returning to the topic of consumption, I'll tell you that a friend first injected me with an opiate-based mixture. It was closer to night. I ran away from home that day for a disco trip. After dancing, we gathered at a rented apartment, all of us under 20. One guy worked as a furniture assembler in a warehouse, got a decent salary with a bonus the day before. He rented a room on the outskirts of the city for a day. He wanted to surprise everyone with an injection. He bought ingredients through a local distributor. There were so-called trusted individuals who sold recipes and components, active substances. A couple of people cooked shirka. They filled the liquid into syringes, gave injections one by one. I saw how one of the injected guys slightly revived. A strange smile spread across his face. Another, after the injection, began rubbing his hands on his clothes, explaining it as some heightened tactile sensations. The smell, even now, reminiscent of overripe fruits. They literally pulled my hand to watch. To avoid looking, I turned my gaze away. The needle pierced the skin so quickly, like a mosquito bite. Then, a sense of euphoria seemed to spread within me. Tremor, at first, light, then pleasant weakness. The feeling was interesting. I hadn't experienced it before. I sat on it once a week for over 2 years. I sniffed drugs closer to 19. Cocaine was brought to my friend's wedding by guests from the bride's side. One of those guys at the party was from Azerbaijan. If I'm not mistaken, he studied at the local university on exchange. It must be admitted that even today, Azerbaijan brings one of the purest prohibited products, without impurities. I sniffed this happiness to my heart's content, and the whole night was a hustle. Energy was tearing me apart from the inside. The state of joy was replaced by the emotion of turmoil. It's like you're getting pleasure, and you're also active. Fortunately, during the festivities, our parents were busy organizing the celebration, so they didn't notice anything.
From a medical point of view, the influence of any substance with a narcotic component results in altered consciousness, intoxication of the mind, a completely different mental picture. If we talk about the classification and types of narcotic substances, let's analyze them based on several characteristics. We divide them into plant-based, opiates from poppies, marijuana or hashish, from hemp, mescaline, extracted from cacti in South America, and synthetic drugs. They may have a plant basis, but the drugs themselves are obtained through synthesis, mixing, and conducting chemical reactions. Chemical substances can be the basis. This includes amphetamines, LSD, ecstasy, and various barbiturates. The second simple classification of narcotic substances is based on the level of action on the mental and physiological state of the human body. Accordingly, experts distinguish light drugs, a mild effect on the psyche, slow development of addiction, low or mild damage to all physiological systems. This group includes cannabis derivatives. Heavy drugs, rapid development of effects and subsequent dependence, high impact on physiological processes. This includes opiates, cocaine, and almost all types of synthetic drugs. Dividing them by origin, properties, and side effects, we have the following picture. Weed, marijuana, hashish, and hemp all refer to a specific plant, one of the most recognizable types of natural plants in the world. Its leaves consist of 5 to 7 thin segments with serrated edges, somewhat resembling stars. It is said that mentions of this plant as a psychoactive substance first appeared in the records of the Emperor of China. Beliefs speak of Shiva's favorite pastime, smoking weed, so in Hinduism, this activity is considered an approach to Shiva. This Hindu deity, Shiva, symbolizes the cosmic. In past centuries, marijuana was even presented as a gift, a valuable item, used by doctors in medicine, and sometimes during ceremonies and gatherings, with smoking mixtures. There is information that from 1850 to 1940, it was used as a remedy for nausea, rheumatism, and pain, and was readily available in supermarkets and pharmacies. Practically at the same time, American pharmacists were still selling medicines based on opiates, cocaine, or heroin substances. By the way, marijuana varieties differ in taste, aroma, and color. Accordingly, some use the plant for paper, ropes, oil, and fibers. But on illegal farms, it is deliberately bred to achieve the effect of mild narcotic intoxication. Cannabis and its derivatives are often associated with the illegal entertainment industry. And some of the most popular marijuana strains in the world are White Widow, a hybrid of Brazilian and South Indian hemp varieties. They say that around 160 million people worldwide have used weed at least once a year.
I think this is intentionally reduced statistics, and the actual numbers of users are much higher. The most common methods are smoking joints, using a bong, bubbler, hookah, vaporizer, or consuming doses directly from a knife. Others prefer to cook marijuana-infused edibles, such as cakes, cookies, pastries, or oil. People experience different psychological effects with each method of consumption. I know this for sure from those with extensive experience. Marijuana is the most demanded and widespread substance for relaxation, certainly after alcoholic beverages.
Previously, hemp could naturally spread in nature as a weed. The cannabis plant can grow in almost any environment, with an average growth rate of 3 to 5 centimeters per day. The height of an adult plant is about half a meter. But now, cannabis cultivation is under strict control. You are unlikely to come across an unattended plantation of plants on the streets. For example, in the USA, according to federal law, marijuana is illegal. Nevertheless, 2 states, Colorado and Washington, are exceptions to this law, and in these states, it is entirely legal to possess a certain amount of marijuana. Well, in Colorado, you can also legally grow a small amount of marijuana at home, while in Washington, it is prohibited. More than 30% of American school students have tried marijuana, according to statistics presented by public figures. In the Netherlands, smoking marijuana is also within the legal field, with some nuances. But overall, it is legal. In North Korea, despite absurdly strict restrictions on everything, authorities do not crack down on marijuana. There is no proper control over the cultivation and smoking of marijuana. Partially, marijuana strains have been legalized by authorities in the Netherlands, the Czech Republic, Belgium, Switzerland, Australia, Canada, and Israel. Since almost 80% of the marijuana crop is grown in hidden places with artificial lighting, narcotics police analyze residential apartments and plots with houses where electricity consumption is off the charts. Especially if only a grandmother is registered in the house, and the electricity bills are similar to those of a medical laboratory or a factory workshop. So even hobbies related to Hindu mythology, growing marijuana for religious rituals, won't save from criminal responsibility here on Earth. This is an explanation for the enthusiasts of gods and cosmic matters from me. God smoked himself and told us to do it won't work in court. But according to unofficial data in the USA, marijuana brings in more profits than corn and wheat crops combined.
Certainly, legends circulate about the benefits of marijuana, claiming that it helps combat nausea, weight loss, insomnia, neuropathic pain, asthma, and glaucoma. It is also said to alleviate symptoms of migraines, hangovers, inflammatory bowel diseases, fibromyalgia, and even contribute to managing multiple sclerosis, reducing alcohol abuse, aiding in bipolar disorder, Parkinson's disease, and epilepsy. However, in most cases, statistics show the development of physiological and mental illnesses due to chronic marijuana use. For example, teenagers who have been associated with marijuana for an extended period often experience a noticeable decrease in IQ. There are various hemp-based products, but it is commonly considered a smoke drug. Its impact on the body alters consciousness and mood, attributed to the presence of cannabinoids. This class of narcotics includes hashish, a mixture of resin, pollen, and crushed hemp tops, and marijuana itself, dried hemp. According to reviews, smoking weed induces euphoria, joy, and carefreeness. However, every third person notices a sudden hunger and even thirst. All sensations become more vivid. The perception of colors and sounds intensifies. Some people become sluggish, while others become hyperactive. In the case of abrupt cessation of long-term smoking, depression may set in. Excessive doses may lead to paranoia and hallucinations. Typically, an introduction to marijuana is the first step, after which the addict progresses to more severe types.
Well, I don't consider weed a drug at all. It's like tobacco, just with pleasant additional properties. I think it causes less harm than alcohol. But my friend really caught a state of paranoia. He tried to hide from intelligence agencies when smoking weed. Then he thought that former enemies were looking for him, and he was constantly looking over his shoulder. Cartoons often hallucinate, the ones you watched in childhood. A classmate got glitched, and he was running away from spiders. Different side effects or intolerances can occur, but most people feel light and happy.
Both are dependencies. Marijuana affects each user very individually, but the problems it causes are no less than those from other psychotropic substances. After marijuana, I would mention opiates, which have a sedative effect. This category includes natural and synthetic morphine-like compounds, such as heroin, methadone, poppy straw, and acetylated opium. The distinctive feature is that even with short-term use, they cause severe addiction. The state of euphoria is short-lived and accompanied by drowsiness. Speech becomes slow and drawn out. A person becomes very docile, calm, constantly seeking solitude and silence. Typical external signs include pale skin, slow pulse, constricted pupils, and a sharp weight loss due to loss of appetite.
He's right. The pupil, a dot, such calmness and blissful. And the injection gives an instant injection of this lounge mood, a rush of euphoria and a lightness of flight. It takes a few seconds for the solution to mix with the blood in the veins, the so-called hit, in the language of an addict.
However, the risk of HIV infection and hepatitis increases due to the use of shared syringes. Immunity decreases, the liver no longer copes with its function. Due to the disruption of calcium metabolism, teeth and bones deteriorate. Of all drugs, specifically opioid, narcotics are among the most dangerous for humans. Essentially, drug addicts inject poison into themselves. The amphetamine group includes ephedrine, Pervitin, and methamphetamine. They are administered intravenously. The thing is that at that time, Pervitin was considered a legal stimulant, not a narcotic. Already at the beginning of World War II, during the German advance in Poland, these tablets were with every medic. They were issued at the soldier's request. Today we know such substances as methamphetamine or crystal meth. Earlier, it was called Pervitin, a substance derived from amphetamine. In the past, A well-known stimulant of the central nervous system, it was used in psychiatric practice to treat narcolepsy and various origins of depression. There is a belief that Nazi Germany used such substances. It was the soldiers who participated in conquest battles. They developed these miracle drugs to allow pilots, sailors, and infantrymen to perform superhuman tasks in irregular working shifts. Soldiers taking Pervitin sometimes did not sleep for several days in a row, marched long distances without extended rest, and after taking a substantial dose, felt no pain or hunger. Additional effects of narcotic intoxication include a sense of euphoria and tranquility. Heart rate accelerates, pupils dilate. These substances cause increased motor activity and sexual attraction. An addict can go without food and sleep for a long time. Inherent side effects of amphetamines include headaches, worsened vision, increased sweating. Internal organs, brain, heart, liver, and kidneys, are quickly affected. Overdose often leads to death. Hallucinogens. The very name speaks to the action of the drug. Under the influence, the dependent experiences hallucinations. We're talking about LSD tablets, dry mushrooms. The modern analog of LSD was first synthesized by Swiss chemist Albert Hofmann in the fall of 1938. The young scientist worked for a pharmaceutical company. Later, based on experiments, medications were created by pharmaceutical companies in various European countries. LSD was used to improve the memory of patients, treat depression, combat alcoholism, heroin, and cocaine addiction among drug addicts. It was used as an adjunct in psychotherapy for various forms of schizophrenia and neurosis. Some advocates actively promoted LSD, convincing the public that its beneficial qualities outweighed possible side effects. According to research of that time, the initial results of medical LSD use demonstrated good potential. However, the escalating use of LSD in the youth culture, going out of control, led to a complete ban on LSD. In the 1960s to 1980s, the emerging counterculture in America promoted active psychotropic substance use, advocating a departure from conservative morals and the lifestyle of the majority of society. American weekly newspapers constantly published articles containing sensational reports of suicides, murders, and other law violations after taking LSD. The social and political realities of that time may have been one of the reasons for imposing taboos on LSD. Today, due to the widespread use of this drug in the illegal entertainment industry for specific recreational purposes and the public resonance caused by government and secret experiments, this substance is classified as a prohibited narcotic. The effects of LSD usually last from 6 to 12 hours, depending on the dose, tolerance, body weight, and age. After taking it, the heart rate increases, and a person experiences unconditional happiness. Against the backdrop of hallucinations, they see sounds and hear colors. Irreversible changes in the brain occur, leading to personality disintegration. Even with short breaks between intake, a person becomes irritable and explosive.
I will tell you that the user can experience various hallucinations. The colors of nature can change. The walls in the living room can flow, and the furniture can take on human forms. A person becomes engulfed in a mad fear of going insane. They may be carried from their own apartment into another illusory world of fantasies, transported to a different place or historical time. Some note that the body seems insensate, lifeless, very strange. Patients feel outside their own physical shell and can observe the tragedy of their situation from a distance.
A very dangerous thing for the body. Speaking of popular drugs, it is impossible not to mention ecstasy. Synthetic stimulant drugs are produced in the form of colorful tablets. The substance's effects last from 3 to 6 hours. During this time, the body's endurance increases, and a person can go without sleep for a long time. As soon as the high subsides, they feel intense fatigue and apathy. The absence of the next miracle pill induces depression in the dependent person, up to the desire to harm themselves and others. The nervous system suffers greatly, and among the organs, the heart and liver are affected.
Usually, addicts carry ecstasy in the form of tablets. Ecstasy is often used as a recreational drug at parties and clubs, along with cocaine. which is often distributed in the form of white powder in youth circles.
Cocaine, a plant-based drug derived from coca leaves. Cocaine gradually numbs the area from the eyes to the chest, and the body loses sensitivity. Crack, pure cocaine, soda, and water, is produced from it and used for smoking. To identify the type of drug, signs such as accelerated breathing, dilated pupils, and lack of appetite help. Excessive activity and excitement appear. Consequences of regular cocaine use include arrhythmia, loss of taste and smell, deafness. Hallucinations, paranoid psychoses, and aggression are characteristic. Death often occurs due to myocardial infarction. Inhalants, presented by nitrous oxide, volatile organic carbons, highly aromatic toxic substances. Substances in this group are inhaled, and the addiction is called toxicomania. It is important to understand that all substances with narcotic effects, regardless of the group, pose a threat to a person's health and life.
I subscribe to every word, because I receive similar feedback from acquaintances who are really on drugs, and I myself lived for years in one state or another. Sobriety for me was like a cold for each of you. The period of sobriety in my life is shorter than being under the influence of psychoactive substances.
I'll briefly mention depressants. Butyrate, barbiturates, benzodiazepines are often prescribed by a doctor if they observe a patient's systematic depression. At first glance, these pills seem harmless and are intended to help cope with a severe condition. Clinically proven, they depress the nervous system, slow down reactions, and cause profound relaxation. Such drugs are taken for several months to a year, which definitely takes a toll on health. Specialists note that in the last 20 years, demand for drugs has increased by more than 70% worldwide. Some addicts may spend several $1,000s on drugs every month.
By the way, thousands of dollars for drugs are still cheap. Wealthy addicts often opt for expensive cocaine. The farther you are from the producer, the higher the prices for the product. In Colombia, Peru, and Bolivia, where coca crops are cultivated, grams of pure product can cost tens of dollars. At the same time, in Australian drug dens, hundreds of dollars per gram of cocaine is a common practice. In the USA, closer to the Mexican border, the cost of some types of drugs is lower than in other cities. Businessmen in the drug sphere understand that before reaching the user, the product goes through several intermediaries. Each marks up the price and dilutes the pure product with additives for additional profit. For example, a couple of grams of amphetamine purchased in the Netherlands for a few tens of dollars will cost 4 to 5 times more after the Polish border. In Eastern Europe, for the same packet of powder, they may ask for $100. This is how the business of these criminals is built. The end consumer, the addict, covers all these expenses. Payment to manufacturers, smugglers, dealers. Typically, most drugs have characteristic colors, shapes, appearances, or scents, but to determine the exact active psychotropic substance, an examination is carried out. In a specialized laboratory, with the appropriate equipment, experts conduct chemical analysis.
I'll tell you about colors and smells. Opium poppy has a pale color, petals with a not bright violet-blue hue. Pure heroin is white, but due to impurities, it can change color from grayish and pink to brown and black. Heroin smells like acetic acid. Dried poppy straw will be brown. Methadone in powder form is sold as a white powder. Marijuana, almost not subject to processing before consumption. The dry hemp color is swampy olive dark brown. Hashish, like sticky brown plasticine, is sold in a pressed state as bricks. The smell is what hemp has, as it is made from the pollen and resin of the plant's tops. Amphetamines encountered during detentions. Ephedrine, white crystals, sometimes with a yellow tint. Ephedrine, a solution reminiscent of the smell of violet flowers. Meth, oily, transparent liquid with an apple scent. Cocaine, white crystalline powder, usually snorted. Ecstasy is sold in the form of brightly colored tablets, synthetic. Inhalants that local people tried in the area had a pungent chemical odor, gasoline, gas, glue, acetone.
When detaining couriers or drug users, law enforcement often encounters new visual forms of popular narcotic substances. The appearance of psychoactive drugs is deliberately transformed. It can be challenging to distinguish modern drugs from useful vitamins or colorful candies. Producers of illegal goods impress with their resourcefulness and ingenuity. The drug market is simply enormous. All its participants must bear legal responsibility, starting from those who cook synthetic substances in a chemical lab or grow organic drugs on an illegal farm as manufacturers. But this is just the initial stage. Then, stocks or packaged goods are sent to wholesale suppliers, often resorting to the help of intermediaries, smugglers. The implementation is provided by wholesale and retail sellers. Sellers trade through marketplaces. Couriers deliver small packages, or concealers hide stash. Moreover, black PR specialists also conduct comprehensive advertising in the drug trade. There are marketing and promotion specialists in the drug business. Aggressive advertising is common. We even notice new graffiti in alleys, crossings, and we paint over them. It's also one of the elements of the sales strategy. They write contact information, names of goods for sale. Usually, such ads try to be left in places where people gather, near shopping centers, subways, in crossings on the road, in parking lots for motorists, on pillars of pedestrian roads, at the entrances of multi-story buildings. Customers are sought everywhere. Sometimes the current prices are written. There are often names of communities, web channels, links to posts on various internet resources.
The Internet is a global network that has become an alternative to classical ways of obtaining information, a communication tool for connecting people. Even television channels, radio, and print newspapers have created online resources. By the way, Internet connections are not only through cellular and satellite devices, but also underwater cables that connect entire states, through which extremely important information is sometimes transmitted. In the Mediterranean Sea, there are underwater lines providing data transmission between continents. Naturally, the criminal world understands the advantages of entering the Internet and actively develops business online. The illegal shadow market operates similarly to the traditional one. The entire Internet is a vast network of servers, millions in different countries around the world. They are all connected. This improves the interaction possibilities for drug producers, wholesale buyers, and retail customers to stay in touch. Take, for example, the darknet. For understanding, it's a part of the global internet, but somewhat hidden from the eyes of ordinary users. That is, additional options or capabilities are needed to enter there and carry out activities. The servers of narcotic resources are elements of the global internet and at the same time part of the darknet. Often, owners of drug platforms physically place servers in Asian countries, South America, there, where they don't care about the jurisdiction of developed European countries. The most favorable conditions are where jurisdictions are not supported, and the rules of world organizations do not work properly. Third world countries, where law and democracy operate in manual mode. Regarding the CIS space, this is possible in Russia. However, every provider has FSB black boxes SORM2, and they check them. The darknet is associated with the use of privacy, anonymity. Tor, a project that played a significant role in the formation and development of the darknet, is a browser known worldwide today. Its development began in the 1990s in the laboratories of the U.S. Navy. Tor has thousands of network nodes, 27, on all continents of the Earth, and the number of network participants is hundreds of millions of people. The Tor browser is created for almost all modern operating systems. Its feature is that the project's servers are connected by the so-called onion routing onion. The signal enters one server, loops in the middle of the server, and exits by merging with another server. It is a system of proxy servers that allows establishing an anonymous network connection protected from eavesdropping. It is considered an anonymous network of virtual tunnels providing data transmission in encrypted form. Messages are repeatedly encrypted and then sent through several network nodes called onion routers. Even if one or more of them are compromised, an anonymous connection can still be established. Each router receives messages, re-encrypts them, and sends them to another onion router. It provides a high degree of non-coherence, making it difficult for eavesdroppers to determine the addresses of the sender and receiver of messages.
In the case of using a regular computer and a standard internet browser, we would quickly obtain user data from the provider by sending appropriate requests from law enforcement agencies to internet service providers. Company executives are obligated to react and cooperate with law enforcement. The search for criminals in the online environment would be significantly accelerated. However, online criminals, including those involved in the drug trade, resort to various tricks.
Absolutely right. I'll explain it in simple terms. A regular user goes online, types the address of the desired domain on the keyboard, the website's address on the internet. The computer translates this request into a language understandable to the machine. A route is immediately constructed through transit servers worldwide, and the user's request reaches the desired resource. Here, we've reached the server where the website is physically located. In reverse, but possibly through a different route, the response to the request arrives. Internet users send millions of requests every second, and the internet system constructs the fastest route. Let me draw an analogy with a car navigator. When you search for a geolocation point, enter the coordinates, and receive the fastest route. In a regular open entry to the internet, a person connects from one server, signals, and moves to another. At the click of a mouse, information is instantly updated. IP addresses, DNS, are available. An IP address, Internet Protocol, is a unique numerical identifier for a device in a computer network. The information from the IP address shows your location, city, region. DNS, Domain Name System, is a computerized distributed system for obtaining information about domains. It is often used to get the IP address by the host's name, computer, or device. When it comes to the darknet, anonymity on the network, hidden resources, many buyers, and drug dealers typically use browsers like Tor. In this case, it is evident that the user has connected to the Onion network, operating based on Onion routing. It's unclear where they moved in the network because requests intentionally go through numerous servers to confuse the user's current trail. It's not a simple and most direct route, as happens when using a standard browser in a regular network. Add a specifically installed VPN, Virtual Private Network, a virtual private network. VPN is implemented through a special set of software tools. This implementation ensures high performance, a more reliable high degree of data security. To attempt to decrypt them, significant computational power, expensive hardware, specialized equipment will be required, which is not accessible to the average user. Often, cunning criminals go through an anonymizer, a special web proxy that hides data about the computer and user in the local network from the remote server. It works by changing the user's IP address. When visiting internet resources to which you don't have access for some reason or have been restricted, the anonymizer provides the site's data through which the entry was made instead of your computer's data. Essentially, they use tools available to the average network user. The Tor itself was created with good intentions. The Onion network is used by opposition figures working in countries with harsh dictatorship. Activists who are inconvenient to sell out governments protect their confidentiality. Sometimes, journalists and investigators anonymously obtain information in this way. Representatives of organizations fighting for rights also occasionally come to Tor to carry out their activities confidentially. This project is supported by volunteers. Private individuals make donations. By the way, anyone from any part of the world can become a part of the Tor network. There are requirements for the server. You need to download specialized software, and after that, you will be connected to the general Onion routing system. This is precisely what special services take advantage of. They join as regular participants, providing their computers for the project. I'll be honest, it's not guaranteed that you'll be able to obtain a lot of information this way, but some important data can be accessed. Here's a simple example. There is a certain number of servers that handle traffic in a specific region, the scale of a state. If a substantial number of servers are added as participants, most likely, some of the traffic will go through these channels. After decrypting these signals, requests, you will acquire some information. It's not certain that you'll be able to find all the desired data, but partial leakage of information is possible. Law enforcement can also carefully monitor entry and exit points in the darknet. This also helps combat online crime. All the measures mentioned above will, in one way or another, help identify the real offline offices of drug trafficking representatives.
I confirm, and I would like to add that often, when dismantling drug trafficking points, we discover specialized software on the computers and phones of the criminals.
By the way, I would like to specifically address the myth that websites on the internet or the darknet are safe without the use of JavaScript. For those not familiar, let me explain. JavaScript is simply a programming language used by many developers. JavaScript is integrated to some extent in over half of the world's web resources and online platforms. Thanks to it, websites become more technological with additional features on web pages. All modern browsers support JavaScript. Microsoft Edge, Internet Explorer, Google Chrome, Mozilla Firefox, Opera, Safari, and others. However, if we disable JavaScript functions, the JavaScript code on the viewed pages will not be executed, making these pages less functional. Some websites that are entirely built on JavaScript may cease to function. Fragments of specially embedded JavaScript can indeed be used to record any kind of user activity on a web page. If we talk about abuses by developers or criminals online, but why do we forget the nuance that many users willingly install a large number of applications on their smartphones, computers, and tablets? By the way, without checking the authorship, there is no understanding of who and when created the interfaces. Unfortunately, such programs often pose a greater threat than the JavaScript programming language itself. Of course, if you simply don't know how to clear browser cookies, your unpreparedness allows governments and private companies to retain your user information, browser type, preferences, location, etc. Cookies are persistent. This data continues to exist after you close the browser. In simpler terms, a company can see which websites you visit. Naturally, this type of tracking is justified by providing better interaction with users on the internet. Thus, services use the information obtained from clients to display relevant advertising based on needs, age, region, and so on. So, looking at these processes globally, I am forced to disappoint you and tell you the harsh truth. Believe me, whether the JavaScript programming language is involved or you have turned off these functions in your browsers doesn't matter. In practice, any well-functioning online system can be disrupted, including websites, social networks, and online forums. In other words, virtually all companies in the world potentially risk being hacked. This includes the American Pentagon, the Israeli Mossad, and other extremely important structures with confidential information. I would call it an arms race in the cyber specialist and criminal hacker environment. Attackers come up with a tool, use it to harm someone, and gain their own benefit. Then, intelligence agencies find methods of protection, prevention, and identification of these criminals. Subsequently, attackers gain experience, invent more sophisticated malicious software, a multi-level system for stealing user data on the network. Thus, the entire process gradually unfolds. Internet security involves a series of precautionary measures, as well as a software and hardware complex. Many people search for vulnerabilities in the network, but only a few find them. Even the strongest giants in the online market suffer from this. Remember the situation with Twitter users being infected by worms. A user inadvertently visited the page of an infected account, and their profile became infected, spreading the worm further. There was also a hacker attack on the mobile operator Kyivstar, operating in one of the European countries. Even the powerful resource, Facebook, has notified users of massive data breaches. Representatives of the company have repeatedly justified themselves to the government and ordinary citizens in the context of the use and loss of confidential data. Facebook advised its customers to carefully check the applications that request Facebook account information. Later, Apple and Google also removed download some malicious apps from their stores. Today, Apple ID is the key to a large amount of personal information, including purchases and online subscriptions. iCloud contains personal contacts, calendars, photos, notes, and GPS locations. A compromised Google account can grant access to Gmail, both personal and corporate emails, YouTube, Google Drive, and other services. Speaking globally about information leaks, employees of local firms often provide confidential data to attackers. For example, in online banking, a manager may accidentally or intentionally leak customer payment card data. Companies providing internet and mobile communication services obtain much more information about their customers compared to offline businesses. To obtain the necessary phone number, secret word, or numeric combination, criminals attempt to bribe employees of postal services, mobile communication providers, banks, and government service centers. Prominent developers of large corporations with secret information can be targeted by criminal syndicates. Interestingly, even unwitting customers themselves may inadvertently help attackers find entry keys into databases. Large companies build complex protection systems within their working infrastructure. However, some people lack education in the field of cybersecurity, continue to click on links, and become vulnerabilities in the system. This is evident in the case of social networks. In general, it is rightly said that any company is only as strong as its weakest employees are protected. This rule applies to the online world as well. Moreover, safeguarding confidential data in the global sense involves various protective measures, starting from basic cybersecurity principles and clear literacy in working on the internet. There is always a calculation of various risks and scenario modeling. Even the departure of highly qualified specialists or top managers to competitors may imply the leakage of classified information from within the company. This should be taken into account by the enterprise's internal security service. In other words, immediately change the passwords of the departed employee, restrict access to corporate online services. Ordinary employees should feel loyalty from the management. It is more challenging for attackers to recruit an employee working in a comfortable environment. Dissatisfied specialists are easier to redirect against the existing system. You see, in each specific case, a group of criminals identifies specific methods of disclosing confidential information. The obtained data is then necessary for subsequent illegal enrichment, withdrawal from bank cards, online purchases, withdrawal of cryptocurrencies from wallets.
In the course of our activities, we have repeatedly encountered combined methods where a malicious actor obtains part of the information online and the missing data in the offline environment. This involves the use of bribery, blackmail, and deception. For example, if an individual is very careless online, a criminal can acquire certain information. By exposing it to the world, a high-ranking official may lose their position, leading to blackmail.
These schemes work not only in politics but also in the online environment. Anyone can be affected. Even a programmer working on creating the security of a website is well aware of the vulnerabilities in the system they build. A software developer clearly understands what user data can be traced while working in such an interface. Someone with access to classified information leaks the data. Selling information about users on the darknet is popular, and prices for these services can reach astronomical values, from a couple of $100s for credit card information to tens of thousands of euros for hacking a specific government official's or businessman's email. Some people turn to hackers to damage competitors' servers. You can buy malicious programs, ransomware, encrypting viruses, and order DDoS attacks on specific dates. Access to cryptocurrency wallets, social networks, or various personal services can be organized. People sell forged documents in electronic and paper form, lost passports, and driver's licenses. Diplomas and certificates from organizations are also counterfeited. Even online orders for murder and causing harm to individuals are accepted within the darknet. Essentially, the darknet represents a black market with a wide range of services, and drugs have always been at the top of search queries among darknet users. In most countries, visiting darknet resources does not violate any laws. In fact, some scenarios of its use remain entirely legal, as individuals have the right to access the network and monitor various websites online.
Indeed, engaging and specific transactions with participants in the black market carries criminal responsibility with all the serious consequences. As a rule, the most cunning criminals do not openly discuss their transactions over mobile communication and do not exchange direct messages within the cellular network.
Radio signals, cellular communication, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, NFC, satellites. They were cautious with all of this. Many drug groups strive to ensure the safety and anonymity of their employees. Satellites and mobile communication stations are monitored by government structures and private companies. Phones transmit a lot of information through the SIM card of the communication operator, which uses an old and very vulnerable protocol. Therefore, instead of regular SMS messages, criminals communicate through messengers. For example, Threema has an Android and iPhone version. The service can be used anonymously. This messenger positions itself as a company that does not work with government organizations and business corporations trading user data. Threema is built from scratch to generate as little information on servers as possible. Messages are deleted after being sent and delivered to another user. Local files are stored on the smartphone or tablet in encrypted form. These methods will help effectively counter the unauthorized use of your confidential information, including metadata. And all this secrecy and anonymity play into the hands of the criminal syndicate. By the way, another messaging service, Signal, has no ads, no affiliate advertisers, and no secret tracking. At least that's how the creators and users describe the app. Its servers are located in Switzerland, and the software is developed in-house. It's free for everyone. Signal is an independent non-profit organization. Development is supported by grants and donations from ordinary users. When using Signal, at the provider level, it will be seen that there was a request, the messenger connected to the internet, and a signal was sent. And that's it. Except for the sender and receiver, no one else sees what this message was about. And, for example, they agreed on a real meeting or something else.
The internet has expedited processes. Dealers find it easier to locate customers, can negotiate more anonymously, and the supplier and buyer often meet online for the first time. Then they transition to the offline environment. Online is only a part of the business because the product needs to be physically obtained.
Well, law enforcement is always a step behind, in my personal opinion. They always seem to be catching up with crime. Apparently, the police can't keep up. There's a lack of resources, funding for salaries.
Let's not mudsling those who fight against drug crime. As far as I understand, you were once part of this chain, selling and using. So, you're not the one to judge who's chasing whom. Well, drug problems are created by people like you, too. You were part of all that horror, guilty of many things. Foolish teenagers suffered, so don't point fingers at others. Have you served enough time for your crime? I'm sure you've reformed for the rest of your life.
You just want to put more addicts in jail for show, instead of treating and helping. Instead, every day they come up with stricter laws and become supervisors like in concentration camps. And most importantly, what about the impunity of people in uniforms or in power? Those who fight against this phenomenon make a living from it. They take addicts and couriers under their protection, cover drug dens and labs, make money from drug trafficking in the area. Why would they stop their own earnings? Haven't you heard about cops turning into drug lords? Otherwise, why do people in uniforms join the dark side? Even in the news, there are stories about former police officers becoming founders of drug networks.
Scoundrels are everywhere, but there are more decent people. We conduct raids, enhance surveillance, have preventive meetings, work on anticipation wherever possible.
So, are you sitting here all honest and upright? Never took bribes during your service, never covered for your superiors, never broke the law? Are you sure you'll never sell out to the criminals?
My subordinates and I have done everything possible to maintain order, to fight against cunning drug dealers like you. We caught you, and we'll catch the rest.